But it's now time for No Holds Barred. This is our third debate here on the Shoot or Shoot Basketball podcast. We've got two debaters here today. One is representing Luka Doncic, that's Marcus, and then we have Trey Young represented by Will. I'm going to give these guys a couple minutes each to state their case as to who is the better basketball player, and then I'll ask them a question before flipping it over to the next guy. But I'm going to start with Will. Will, make your case for why Trey Young is the better basketball player right now.
Right, okay, well, I'll give it my best shot at least. First of all, just a disclaimer. I don't hate Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic is a good basketball player. I just hate the media attention he gets in comparison to Trae. So I'm just throwing that out there to start with. So Trey Young, obviously, extremely talented point guard. Guy averaged 30 points and 9 assists last year. In a sophomore year, only Oscar Robertson has done that in the NBA. He also holds a stat of having more than 10 games with 40 points, which at under 21 only LeBron James had. So he's up there in some stat lines with some big basketball players in the NBA era. And yeah, for me, he's just a straight out baller. People are going to hate this call, but I think he's the second best passer in the NBA currently behind LeBron. And if you're averaging 9 assists at a team which was last in 3-point percent shooting, and you had pieces like Gallo and Bogdanovic, that's only going to go up. And I expect him to average 10, 11 assists this year at least. What else have I got? Okay, talking on stats in comparison to him and Luka, I think they're obviously very, very similar in terms of their stat lines. They average similar points. Obviously, Luka shades it in rebounds because of his size. But one thing which Trey gets a lot of hate for is his defensive stats and his defensive end. And I don't want to throw an excuse, but I'm just going to say one thing is that the way that the Hawks basketball setup has been in these last 2 years with Trey Young is everything has been running through Trey. The whole city, the whole team, everything goes through him. And offensively, he's the guy that everyone looks at on the floor and goes, you've got to get us out of a hole here. And that puts so much effort for him on the offensive end. And what I think a lot of people want to see is just more effort on the defensive end. And I just think playing day in, day out, being the main guy offensively, it puts a lot on him. And not an excuse, take a rest on defense, but he has to just have some sort of time where he just let's go a little bit, because he has to be on the court for as long as he is, because they need him offensively. And if you add some scorers with Bogdanovic, with Gallo, with Rondo, he's going to have less effort on the offensive end, and his defensive effort is going to improve this year. And I definitely see that happening. Not to mention, Luka isn't a great defensive player. Like, this guy isn't that quick. He's not that agile. Obviously, he's got his size, so blocks is going to be more impressive from his point. But I don't think there's a massive difference between Luka and Trey defensively. And as Marcus said earlier, like, we know people like Steph Curry and like James Harden, these guards who aren't massive, they can become better defensive players. And I definitely think the longer that Trey goes through his NBA career, that will definitely happen. Another thing positively going forward for Trey is the fact that he took the second most free throws last year in the league. It's obviously a league we know which is growing in foul trouble, and refs getting a lot of hate on Twitter for giving fouls every 2 seconds. But it's something that I guess you've got to be good at if you're a small point guard like Trey, and that's what he's doing. He's getting to the line. He shoots 85% from the free throw line, and Luka only
10 seconds, Will.
10 seconds. And yeah, Luka Doncic is a very good basketball player, but I just think Trey is set up to play with other all-stars and win a ring with his setup and the passing ability he has. And Luka isn't going to get any better because this is his fifth year in the NBA, fifth year in professional basketball, and Trey Young's the MVP. I'm done.
I love the last couple of seconds. We'll grab some water for that one. But I am going to ask you one question before I turn it over to Marcus. So do you think Trey does deserve a lot of the blame for the Hawks not making the playoffs last year, especially given that he plays in the much easier conference in the NBA?
Absolutely not. The Hawks' second main piece for the last 2 seasons has been John Collins, who is a very young guy. So he's only had 3 years previously. But what we have to remember, in a season where the Hawks only played 60 games of basketball, 62 or whatever it was, John Collins missed 30 of those for a ban. That's half of your games which are gone through your main second piece in a big in John Collins. He averages 30 points and 9 assists. I mean, like, what more can he do? Obviously, I think from the 3-point percentage, he needs to get a little bit more efficient. And also what we saw last year was his turnovers decreased massively. So I wouldn't say it was his fault. I think there were still a lot of young players. A Lloyd Pierce coach who is still gaining experience. They're just trying to figure it out the last 2 seasons. And I think, hopefully, if these new players mold into the team well, then it will fit perfectly. So I'll be seeing him in the bubble wherever it is this year.
I'm glad that you mentioned the John Collins missing games, because that was actually what I was looking for in your answer. So good job there, Will. I think you stated your case very well. I know that you were nervous about doing it, but I think you did really well. Marcus, I'm going to turn it over to you now for the next couple of minutes to state your case as to why Luka Doncic is the better basketball player than Trey Young.
Okay, so pretty much for me, thing I look at, because when Trey and Luka were both drafted, they were obviously traded for each other. I loved it right away because I felt like Trey, the type of player he is, he really reminded me a lot about Steph Curry, and Luka really reminds me a lot of LeBron James, to be honest with you. From a rookie standpoint, his ability is probably a little bit better than what LeBron was coming into the league with, because, you know, LeBron came out of high school, Luka's coming out of professional basketball, like you mentioned, Will. But the biggest thing for me is just the playoffs. Really, I mean, you're able to make the playoffs in the Western Conference. I know you mentioned that, you know, John Collins missed 30 games with the ban. Porzingis was traded to, you know, Dallas to be essentially that second guy and to be arguably a cornerstone of that franchise for years to come. He was pretty iffy all season. You didn't really look at him and think, okay, all-star status, you know, that's the same guy in New York. Granted, he got better as time went on. I know he missed couple games in the playoffs, which arguably could have went the Mavericks' way, and we could have maybe seen a Mavericks Nuggets series in the second round if the Clippers didn't, you know, get past them. So for me, it's really just the playoffs. The stats, I'm not gonna, you know, beat a dead horse. They're pretty much neck and neck. Although Luka's played about 8 fewer games. I think Trey has about 40 more points, if I'm not mistaken. To be exact, he has about 400 more assists than Luka Doncic. I'll give you that. He's a much better passer, because I feel like Luka's passes really just come from the flow of the game, and Trey Young, like he's able to actually give dimes to people. So I'll give you that. But as far as like being able to have the biggest impact on a team when it's a team sport, when you have to get all these guys to mesh well together, I think Luka does an incredible job, and he's only getting better, right? And it's something that I feel like Trey has a lot of little things to kind of work on in his game to get to the point where Luka is right now. Not to say that they're really far off, but for me, the biggest thing was his playoff appearance. Like, for them to make the playoffs in the West, where we see all these other teams racing for it, like Portland and Phoenix and San Antonio, for him to be in his second year, excuse me, to do that, that was the biggest, like, eye-opener for me for this Trey and Luka debate when I was getting into it, because the stats are right there, right? Like, I can both see them averaging literally the same numbers their entire career, but just having different, you know, situations. But
okay, so you made your case more so on the playoff side of things.
yeah,
I know that we talked about the second players, but do you think Luka also benefited from probably having better role players as well, guys like Seth Curry on his team and players like that? Do you think that benefited Luka more as far as his numbers go?
I don't think so, to be honest, because he's in the Western Conference, and I think the competition that you face, it's obviously a lot different than, you know, you're going against the Lakers, Clippers, you know, Blazers. You're not going against like the Orlando Magic or, you know, the Charlotte Hornets, you know, every other night. So I think that has a lot to do with it. I'll give you that. He has a much better supporting cast around him, but I think honestly, I genuinely think if you make them switch places, the Hawks would be better and the Mavericks would be worse.
Okay, that's fair. I really like both of the cases that you made. Jet, I'm going to go to you now. Who do you like as the better basketball player right now between those two?
As it sits at this point, I like Luka Doncic more, just because I think that he's shown he's got an ability to lead a team even at this young of an age, which I do believe that Trey can develop, and he will at some point, but that's a matter of time and getting used to your new guys. And he's got a whole new ball game going on down there with basically a new roster. So I do think that there's a path for Trae to end up being a better player than Luka all time, but it comes down to efficiency. It comes down to knowing when to make the pass, knowing when to make the shot, and then when you're taking the shots, making sure you're hitting them. That really is all it is, because you're not going to catch him in rebounds and blocks and stuff like that. You already know that. But if you're that much better than him offensively, that's your path to being better than him all time.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just wanted to add really quick, when Trae first came out of the league and when he was in summer league, you guys remember when he was pulling up from the logo and he was like throwing up air balls? That's what I was most afraid of. That's like his ability to hit those shots, but to just fall in love with those shots. You know, like Luka would never do that. Like Luka will take a different route. But Trae will take them and he'll make majority of them, but it's just something that I don't want him to push towards. I want him to push more towards like the Luka play style to get better.
And that's where I think Trae could become very Steph-like in how he shoots. The difference is when Steph's pulling up from those areas, it's because he's hot, like because he's hitting everything that he's pulling up from there. I think Trae at times can pull up from there when he doesn't necessarily need to. But that being said, I do think that when it comes to these two players, when we revisit this in 12 months, we could they could be dead even, or Trae could even surpass him depending on how this new supporting cast goes, because now the excuse of Trae didn't have as much around him, that won't be the case with Bogdanovich and Gallo. And Dallas even added Josh Richardson. Like, this is going to be very interesting to see both of these guys in their respective conferences. They truly are the future of the league, I think. I think these two could be in the top 10 NBA players for years to come. And I think they could definitely, we could even see them in an NBA Finals one day. I don't think that's out of the question, depending on how both teams build around those cornerstone players. But
yeah, that's up to their franchises.
Because exactly. The franchises have to make the right moves in order to make it happen, but I don't think it's going to be due to these players' lack of ability as much as it's going to be the GMs. So I really like that debate, guys. I think you guys did a really good job. Thing? Yeah, go for it.
On the efficiency thing, obviously we have to see it happen this year, but I will just say, being a Hawks fan and watching like 82 games a season of them play, like some of the shots that he puts up, like contested threes from like 30 foot plus, is because he has to. Like the Hawks offense has had to be going through him and he's had to be making these shots. So
I love the Rondo pickup. I think the Rondo pickup is gonna take his game to another level these next 2 years that he's there.
I think, if Rondo like truly mentors him and like teaches him when to make the pass and when to take the shot, I think that's going to be huge for him.
I guess my point, Will, was just that now that he does have the team around him, I want to see him on the offensive side of the ball make the right choices at the right time.
He has to do it this year.
Don't fall in love with old habits, right?
Yeah, because you don't have to do that now. Now that you have those players around you. But now